I love that. He literally goes out and walks for about a half hour, and since he has been back in the NBA, he has still been doing it. They were on a road trip to start in his stint with Portland. He's walking around Milwaukee. He's walking around the streets of Chicago. Half hour meditation, stay on my square. And Richard, you heard Melo describe how not only physically but mentally when you're out of the game, how it messes with you. What's been your experience? Even, I mean, you didn't have that break like he did, but you late in your career, you had different.
Yeah, but that's also the reason why I retired, is because I was not going to wait on a phone call. And I was not nearly the player, and I was later on in my career. So it was like, once the phone did not ring, I was done. Okay, like I don't have a job and the training camp is starting. To do what he did and work as hard as he has without actually knowing if he's going to get an opportunity is mentally trying. Because the physical part, you can stay ready, but mentally to just be out there free. And this is a person that's played basketball his entire life. This is a person that's played basketball for 30 years. And then to train for a year and not know if you're going to get a job, that can be mentally trying. And I'm glad that he's continuing to do the things that helped get him through it, because that's the last thing you want to do is change the process that allowed you to get back to the right mental space.
I can't relate to that, what it's like to him. I can't even begin to understand it. I am stunned that physically he's been able to come in and play like this. To not play for a year in your mid to late 30s. I mean, I have seen well-conditioned guys who are in a rhythm come into training camp, Richard, in their 30s and get hurt their first week of training camp. I know that he did this little weekend training camp in New York before he signed with them, but for them to, he didn't even have a shoot around. When they started him, I was like, oh my God, they're going to hurt him in his first couple of days. Not only has he shown that he's in physically good condition, he's excelled. I've been blown away by how he's been able to physically contribute right away. I think that's a compliment to him. I know that he talks about being mentally ready, and I have no doubt that was a huge thing for him, but the physical thing, which I can judge, has been very impressive to me as well.
Look, he has been an elite athlete since he was a teenager. So the fact that he is still an elite athlete in his 30s is not a shock. It's like when beauty queens age really well, you're like, yes, Helen Mirren was beautiful when she was younger.
It is hard. There is no soul cycle. There is no training that you can do. You have to eat everything right, and you're older. You have to train for hours every single day. That, like, to your point, is so impressive.
I've seen a number of players that I've watched up close come back after a summer off, not a year, and lose it and be done.
Yes, and to your point, the part I saw Richard, point out when during the interview he said you wake up and you don't even really know what to work on, right? You don't have a training camp, you don't have coaches showing you film, you don't have anything. You just have to sort of do it from scratch every day, and it has been successful. The Blazers have won a season best for them, 3 straight games with Melo, Dame, and CJ. They've all been scoring. So let's take a look here at sort of where they are. You've seen his impact. What do you think? 20 a game.
Okay, so the first week we saw sort of shaky production, but the fact that, again, he was just out there and contributing 20-plus minutes, I was pretty impressed by. Last week was spectacular. And not only what his statistics were, which were great, but the little things, the nuances, where he was positioning, his pass here, defensive positioning here. I don't think we should overreact to week 2, just like we didn't overreact to week 1, especially since 2 games last week were against the Bulls, which frankly are one of the worst teams in the league. Tonight, he has a great opportunity for a wonderful test. He's had a couple of days off. They play the Clippers here on the road. That's going to be a wonderful test to see, especially since the Clippers will have been able to defensively prepare for him. So let's just not assume that he's back and going to be a contender for the All-Star game, but let's not assume that he's done either.
And I completely agree. Like, there's going to be an up and down. Let's not look at this 20 games and 30 games. And look, he might struggle next week. He might have a bad game. We can't over dissect who he is right now. He's with the Blazers. He'll be with them, throughout this entire season. He's going to have a good month. He's going to have a bad month. If we sit here and dissect him, then that's bad for him, and that's not fair to him. I think we just need to allow him to play. And look, 1 week good, 1 week okay, but we know he belongs in this league.
And by the way, here's what happens when you are 35 years old and playing in your 17th season and all of that. You become more of a situational player, even if you're a starter, right?
Yes.
There might be situations against certain teams where you are gangbusters and great. There might be situations where you are more of a liability and they rotate away from you a little bit more. That is what happens as you age in any professional sport. But to your point, he still deserves to be here. And I just have to say, the idea of being out the way he was and returning the way he did, whatever happens from here on out, I hope the insight you got from hearing him talk, I walked away from that room feeling like, man, That is an accomplishment,
Yes.
even in itself.
2 weeks ago,
regardless what happens
I was
from
sitting here hoping for the best but preparing for the worst. And that conversation is no longer on the table. We're now talking about whether he's here or here.
Right.
And I think just that is a great accomplishment.
First player in the week since 2014. Was that 2014?
Yeah, Western Conference Player of the Week, which is incredible. And again, for people who have asked, that decision is made by the league office. It's not by just fans or fellow players or the media. The
League
NBA
office are fans too.
Well, I'm just saying that people were like, "Oh, did fellow players give him that?" No, the NBA gave him that. Coming up.
Numbers gave him that.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN Plus.